Hey everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party. I believe I'm working on my flashcards project. Only say that because yesterday I was working on Say Hello and all that, and honestly, like kind of the theme of flashcard and Stay Hello right now is like, how do you come up to speed? How do you go from like you're working on one set of work and now you have to change gears and work on another set of work? And that is like something that was never an issue until about I want to say 2015 for me. So before 2015, I would go to a job. The very first thing I would think about the moment I turned on that computer, the minute it was fired up, um, the first thing I would think about is the project that I was working on. And then I would think about that project for hours and hours and hours and work on it, obsess about it all day long. And then at the end of the day, that would be the very last thing I'd think about. That was it. And then I want to say probably around 2015, 2016, that was not, has never been the case since then. Now it's like and it's not just my current job, it's been like a lot of jobs where we just shift all day long from one project to another project to sometimes two, three projects in a day. Um, and just like we're just shifting, and the projects are insanely complex. So the projects are more complex now, and you have to remember more of them. So that is kind of the thing. Because there was like a time, like I remember early on, it was kind of neat. It would be kind of cool to see pictures from that. But like anytime you walked into any place where they wrote software, you would see thousands of papers like on the walls. And these papers were gigantic like flowcharts of how everything in the whole system works and all that. And then like when you're having when you're having conversation, you'd be like, "Oh, okay. So now, how does the radar communicate to the TV sensor so that they can both be locked onto the same thing?" And you'd be like, "Oh, okay." And you walk over to a piece of paper and you start following the paper along. And then not only that, but we had like these. I mean, it had to be 100 yards, so 110 meters. I think 100 yards is 110 meters of shelves, like shelves, metal shelves, and they were all next to each other, all lined up. And on top of those shelves would be these thick ass books, and these thick ass books would explain every single thing that was going on. And you could go look in one of those books and you could see exactly how it was supposed to work. That is not how it is today at all. Now you'll get like a little story that says the um, user should have the ability to be happy. Those are your requirements. I mean, like I've seen just incredibly um, unfleshed out requirements anymore. Like they don't, that just doesn't happen. And before it'd be like, this is in this part of this massive system, and this is the exact change we want, and this is exactly how we know it will work, and this is how we exactly will know if it didn't work, and all kinds of stuff. Like that is not how it works anymore. But anyway, so I was deep in thought about circular dependencies, and now I want to shift gears, and I want to shift gears to a new thing, and I guess the best way to do that, I'm going to close YouTube and close that. And I don't think I want to leave this one in a broken state, so let's just go ahead and take care of that really quick. Um, Hit save, and then I'm going to, as soon as this little guy shows up. Okay, yeah, I just didn't want it to be broken. Um, but the next thing I want to do is look in here. I think this has been my favorite way to do this. And just say open recent and look at whether I know it's going to either be say hello or flashcards, and whichever one's older is the one. So say hello must be Saturday and flashcards must be Sunday. Okay. So now, and that like right now we have just started doing these. I think there's like I've done like 5 sessions in each of them. So we just started doing these, and so the next thing I think I typically would do to try to kind of figure out what's going on is usually I like to look at the name of the branch. So this is issue number 7, set up a GitHub IO deployment and check out the branch. And we do want to go into our flashcard. So flashcard is a more mature sort of like the space and time application that I worked on was more focused, was older, the way I used to do things. Now I typically will have a top level project, and then under it I'll have an my Angular project. And sometimes there's more than one, and then I'll have my Cypress project, and then if I have an API or something, I'll have an API project. So anyway, so now we got our Flash. So I want to go to my flashcard builder, CD. I think that, well, probably not. Maybe, well, and then I'm going to say npm start. And I believe that will just start the application. And I think the biggest reason I kind of do this, and this is really emulates kind of like the way I do things at work and in general, is I think the reason I do it this way is because um, I want some wins. I want to get a couple of like, okay, yeah, oh, okay, I went in there, I remembered that. Okay, now I started it. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, the application's still coming up. Um, just little like things that are easy wins. I kind of want to start the session with a few easy wins. And again, I am thinking out loud. So I see that I've already got this build GitHub. And see, it says that I did this 6 days ago. And then this one says last week. So looks like this is like new. Oh yeah, see, this is an uncommitted change. And then this is a committed change. It was issue 5. So, and we see that we're in the flashcard builder. So like I kind of just like I've had a couple wins at this point. Like so I guess I sort of want to build up my confidence. So this is new, the build GitHub. So I guess so now that makes me think, oh, maybe I should see what is new. Okay, so we have this Angular JSON and we've created something in the build called a GitHub build. And then we have our package. And this is the GitHub. It's a build GitHub and it's called that. And so we have this, and this this creates a base href. So I can't quite. So I think, okay, so let's see. I remember it's starting to come back to me in ChatGPT that we were talking to it about like whether we should create a new branch. I think it was saying like GitHub IO branch or something like that. Man, you can just see how much I use ChatGPT. Um, I'm going to be very, very sad if ChatGPT goes away. Really wish they had a date. And I wish I had thought more about like naming things properly. So deploy, okay, this is probably deploy Angular on GitHub. So let's just double check this is the one I care about. If it is, I'll have said the word flashcards. Yeah, so there we go. Okay, so I'm going to rename this one Sunday. Dash flashcards. And I think that is a lot more useful than, let's pull this out. Guess if I'm going to do that, I need to make this browser a little bigger. And then, can I make this bigger? Guess I can't. So here's my Sunday flashcards. Say hello Saturday. So I like this format better. So let's go ahead and do this. Edit, rename. So basically I'm helping myself like next week. saying, hey, next week it'll be a lot easier to find this Saturday one, which there's just no telling um, how far down this is going to be next Saturday and Sunday. I mean, yeah, as you can tell, I use this LLMs like crazy to understand all kinds of stuff. All right, so it looks like I want to create a deploy GitHub. Okay, so basically, let's take a step back and go back to our package.json. So for ilikeemail.com, the general concept is that I will open an FTP and I'll build it. I'll open an FTP and I will then um, I will FTP everything and it should work. But for GitHub, I think what this is telling me is that I can create a deploy GitHub script that will yeah, like this. It will run the ng build. It will pass in the GitHub, which I believe in Angular JSON, that's what we named. Yeah, it'll pass that in. It'll tell it to use that configuration. And then it'll call this Angular CLI GH pages. And then it will tell it that the directory is that it's get. I don't know what this does, this dash directory, but this is and I don't think this is a CLI tool, and I do not think I have it installed. And then GH pages. So let's go look at our package again. If we have it installed, we'll be able to tell because let me look at this one full size. We should see our new. So we should have seen it in the dependencies. And by it, I mean we should have Angular CLI GH pages either in here, but more likely in here. And we don't have it. Okay. For some reason, I was thinking this was the end-to-end test. And I was like, why the heck do I have end-to-end stuff in here? All right. Okay, so, and I don't know exactly what the right word is, but I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so need to install. Yes, you'll need to install if you want. And let's install it in Flashcard Builder. It exists solely to push. It exists solely to push dist browser GH pages while you actually need it in your setup. So just a scam alert. My wife, she doesn't use ChatGPT very much, and so I thought it would be kind of cool to introduce her to her. And I said, "Oh, you should use ChatGPT." So then she went into search on her Chrome browser, and she asked a question, and she got an answer, and then it said, "Do you want? If you want more answers, you have to pay us." And you could pay $1 for 8 days, or you could pay like $100 for the year or something like that. And so I was like, what the heck are you looking at? And so first of all, the first thing happened, somehow she ended up with her search engine being Yahoo, secure Yahoo search or something like that. I don't know, who knows what they actually ran that ended up getting that installed as her default search engine. So, and then that gave her the first link, the Yahoo gave her first link to something like USA Chat GPT.us or something like that. And then that company was just like a proxy in front of ChatGPT. And so you would write your questions that looked just like ChatGPT, and then it would send it to ChatGPT, and then it would get the answer back, but it would only do it once for you. And I think it would tweak your question in such a way that it would make it look like, oh, okay, I'm about to get my answer. And then it wanted money. And so, first of all, I went in, changed her default search engine, changed it back to where it showed her most common things, like, how when you come in here in Chrome, like these are the most visited for some people. For me, they're shortcuts, but for her, they were the most visited, and she liked that. So I had to change it back to that. And then we went to actual ChatGPT proper. There's so many scams. It's just crazy. And the funny thing is, she ran into that because she was trying to determine if a company that she was thinking about doing business with um, was a scam. So it's weird times. All right. So, anyways, I need to install, and this D means it's a dev dependency, Angular CLI. And I like to do it like this. See, I feel like this is, what's the word? Such a cool word. There's a word that means it doesn't last forever, that it's just comes and goes, um, and that there's really no record of it. I don't like that. I would rather have some sort of record of how I installed this. So GHCLI, and that way in the future, if I'm have another project and I'm trying to figure out what I did or something, or if I'm trying to figure out how I got this CLI or whatever, I have this here. And now I can call this. And it also makes sure that I use all the right things, like I used this set of node modules, that it looks in here first. Do we even see it? Yeah, these node modules, and that it installs everything in reference to this. So I've never regretted doing this. Done this thousands and thousands of times, and I've never regretted it. npm run GHCLI. So basically this is going to run this command in this context. So it doesn't matter what other node node version I have installed on the machine. It doesn't matter what other libraries and stuff I have installed. All that matters is this flashcard builder project. So, and I'm not even in the right folder, so we have to be in the right folder. And that's like another thing is, so I don't think that would have worked because the top package doesn't have this script. So it actually made sure that I ran it in the right folder, and running in the right folder wasn't even a thing a month ago. And I did want to take a second to see how I'm like completely 100% off of circular dependencies and 100% in Angular CLI GH pages. And that is a skill that is learned. Like, people aren't just born with this context shifting, like, oh, okay, now I'm working in something very similar, but it's completely different shifting. Like, that is extraordinarily, like, once you get used to it and kind of learn how to deal with it, it's very rewarding, but the process is incredibly difficult to get your brain to context switch that fastly that fastly. And what I will say, what's really bizarre about that is the things that you can remember when you're in different contexts are different. So you could be talking to somebody and you're in one context, and then, or you're working on a project and you're working on one context, and then they can say, um, eh, um, they could say a set of words, and those words can mean something completely different because you're like, it's almost like you're an LLM, like and you're dealing with that context worth of information, and then you move into a different thing, and now they can ask you the exact same question. You can give them a completely different answer because you're working in a different project, and that can definitely lead them to think that you are actually insane. So that's something you got to be really careful of when you're interacting with people. Is like, when you're interacting with people, they're not in your context. And they will not understand that if they're shifting you around from one context to another, that your answers are probably going to be different. Um, which, if you're not highly aware of that, can lead you to be very, very vulnerable. So that is like something you got to keep in mind. Is that, like, when you are shifting context very, very quickly. They and I think this is what they try to do, like when you go to buy a car and stuff, they try to change your context. That's why they have you go into the manager's office and change all the things around you, like when you go to actually finalize everything. So they like to have you like completely confused and all that out there on the floor, and then they move you into the loan side of things, and then like the whole world changes, and now suddenly you have like kind of an authority figure that's in front of you, and they're dressed really nice, and they're acting totally different. Like they're it's just like suddenly now they know what's going on. You don't know what's going on, right? So that's what happens to you. Like if you develop I know like a lot of developers that will be like, if they worked 8 hours, they work on 8 projects. And during all 8 of those projects, they are operating in a different context. And when they're operating in that different context, their answers to the exact same questions might be different. Um, and then if you point that out to them and all that, you can really destabilize a person. So you got to be careful when you're talking to people. Like first part of any conversation I have with any technical conversation I have is getting us onto the same context. So before we even start talking, I start asking questions. Oh, wait, so did you mean this or that? Oh, so are we talking about this or are we talking about that? And then I bring them into my context, into our context that we're wanting to talk about, and then I start asking questions. Um, so anyways, going to do this, and what I expect to happen is some new stuff to show up in my node modules, which I don't care about, and then my a new dev dependency to show up here, at least one. So let's do that. If I remember correctly, this one did take a bit, and then running it took a long time. And I think what it does is it actually creates a new branch for you, pushes the branch, and then it copies things around in these different folders and commits things, and then pushes it, and then do that. So see, this has 10 high severity vulnerabilities. This is absolute clickbait, I think, for the most part. Sometimes it's true. That's the problem, is every once in a while, but in all likelihood, in my personal experience, when you start to dig into these vulnerabilities, what you end up with is like a bunch of tools that are only have some sort of vague vulnerability that only matters if it wasn't that would matter if it was like distributed, but since it's just running on your computer locally, it's not a big deal. um, but and then that's like the things, like a lot of times they'll call things like severe vulnerabilities and they're just like not, and then sometimes things are not, so there are like not vulnerabilities, they're like low vulnerabilities, but it's just like, oh my god, that thing is huge. All right, so now we have this guy right here. So we have this 302 GH pages, and we know exactly how we got it. We got it through this command. So we have that sort of documented. All right, so now that we have that, I think what we want, okay, so now I have it installed, and now I want to add this here. And I think this all makes sense for me. I'm gonna try. I try all the time to read this. There's a lot going on here, um, and so it's easy to get something wrong or just not get it. But let's look at this. So we call this deploy GitHub. I guess I should put it next to build GitHub. All right, so we have deploy GitHub and build this one right here, right on here. And so, okay, so we do an ng build C and GitHub. So it actually builds it too. So I don't even know why we have this one. I guess, I don't know, maybe, yeah, we probably don't need this one, but I guess it's not hurting anything. Um, I guess, yeah. And then npx angler CLI GH pages. Okay, so this is running this CLI that we just installed. And then we're telling it that the directory is flashcards browser. So that's where it expects to find the code, I think is what we're telling it, that we want to deploy. And then this is the name of the branch that we want to put it in. And I don't know if, so now that we're kind of saying that out loud, it does lead me to a question. So, so, so you can never tell, like, is this just like a standard that we do, or is this something that's required by GH page? It looks like we're going to create a branch. If we were to go out to GitHub after we run this, there'll be a branch out there called GH pages. And that is the branch that GitHub will serve. GitHub IO will serve it. Will will the code the distributed code that is in here is the code that GitHub IO will will serve. And I don't know if that is saying, if this is like just a kind of a standard that we have all sort of as developers have settled on, or if this is a requirement by GitHub, and I would like to know that. So, so I'm going to say, I wish it, so I keep saying this, I keep wishing, I guess if you keep wishing long enough, maybe it'll come true. But I wish it would just answer the question. It used to just answer the question, but now it's become a lot wordier, and now it just information overload. Um, so is the is a branch that will be um, created at GitHub. Please answer in what? Please answer in one sentence. That's the first time I've ever tried that. Let's see if I get. Okay, so is that name required by GitHub, or is it um, a standard? So basically, I'm asking, is this required? And now let's see if it goes on. It's not required by GitHub. Okay. Oh, so now it's sticking to one sentence. That's cool. Uh, oh, okay. So is it the default set in page settings? Yes, historically. Okay. Okay, so basically GH pages is a setting. It's something that you can set. It's the default, I guess, that GitHub has when you create a new repo. That's the default that it's going to get turned on to. So we'll see, that could change in the future. So there's a lot of things that could break. And I think when I used this in another project, that was kind of one of my things was like, I do not believe that this CLI is going to work in a year. Um, I think it's unlikely it's going to work in a year, and it's not probably any problem with the CLI code or anything in the CLI. It's probably going to be more like something like someone decides like they don't want to tie this setting to like the name GitHub, or maybe Pages becomes sort of like, oh, yeah, page, the word Pages is problematic because it sort of implies blah 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 or whatever. So um, you just, you know, things change. You know, that's like the one thing you can be sure of. But anyways, I'm gonna try running this deploy GitHub and what it. Okay, so after I have a hard time not being like a bit concerned that I've hurt ChatGPT's feelings, and I'm hoping that in real life ChatGPT doesn't actually have any feelings. I'm hoping that there's not an actual human being on the other side of this that I just like, you know, told that I was just rude to, because I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to lose the sensitivity to being rude. So, you know, like I don't want to get used to being like, oh, who cares if ChatGPT, it's ChatGPT, it doesn't care, and then let that, and then that ends up carrying over in the rest of my life or something. So, anyways, after I run the deploy GitHub script, will, oh, I'm gonna say, should I expect to see application at GitHub.io. I have found that like just mentally putting yourself in a place where you have like a um, where you kind of have a sense of what you expect before you actually push the button can really make the roller coaster a lot smoother. Um, so you know, like there's just I don't know if it's just me, but like when I type in something like npm run deploy GitHub, and like I do get a certain sense of like fear of rejection, just a lot of like natural human responses and feelings about stuff like this that I cannot sort of that aren't realistic, I guess is the best way to put it. Is that the best way to put it? Oh yeah, yeah, they're not realistic. It's not realistic to like it to hurt my feelings if this thing doesn't work. But it also, I find that if I have a mental expectation of what I expect to see, so what I expect to see is if I go here, and I'm actually afraid to do that uh, in Chrome because um, the problem that's Copilot. Why Copilot looks a lot like Edge to me for some reason, the icon, even though it doesn't look anything like it too. Um, so I'm going to go over here, and this is what I see. And now I guess what I'm hoping to see is be able to hit refresh and see my application. Um, so let's see. Let's run the GitHub and see. Oh, npm run deploy GitHub. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay. So just the deep feeling of rejection. I cannot believe how could you reject me that way, Mister? Yeah, thank you, Rhett. Can you believe that? After everything we've done for this code, and now it just rejects us like that. Can you believe that? That's crazy. Anyway, so I guess this will take a couple minutes, but what we're hoping for is as soon as this is done, so something, so built it. So that was the build process. And I always had it in my head that I would run build GitHub and then deploy GitHub, but there's really no reason to do the build. Okay, so an error, maybe that's weird. Okay, so an error occurred while trying to deploy dist folders does not exist. Okay, so it's saying that, I think what it's saying is that in dist, okay, so it looks like this should be Flashcard Builder browser. Flashcard. And then run that. Let's see. Whoop, 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 whoop. And so again, like literally, it seems like 95%, maybe even 99% of everything that GitHub or that ChatGPT gave us was perfect, except for the um, except for this one tiny little thing. This should not, instead of this being flashcards, this should have been flashcard builder. Who knows if it's because I told it the wrong thing or because it just screwed up and gave me the wrong thing, but who cares? But the thing is like if you don't know what you're doing, that you'll never figure that out. That was not literally, but that was probably more difficult than finding a pin in a haystack if you don't know what you're doing. Um, so let's cross your fingers and we there. Boop, 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 boop. So we are done with that. So let's go ahead and commit this code. Let's look at the code, make sure there's nothing cray. Yeah, package lock. I have no idea why I even look in there. I always like sort of chastise myself every time I look in there because it's just such a useless file to look into. It's a very important file. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that file shouldn't be there, but it's absolute waste of time to look in there. So this is, I don't know what video number this is. I know I'd like to put the issue. So this is issue 7. And it is, I think I should give it a video number too. This is Flashcard Builder. And in here, this is video number, this is going to be video 7 too. I think I like to, I can't remember if I put the video first or the issue first. Video 7 dash issue 7. And I will say that adding things like that, little pieces of information like that, truly helps the people downwind of you in the downstream of you um, in your like organization, like when they're trying to cherry pick commits and stuff like that. That sort of information is just invaluable. And then in the future, when you're trying to um, like debug and you're trying to figure out which branch messed things up, though having the video, the issues, all that stuff can be incredibly useful. Um, implements GitHub IO. And then, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to push it. Push it real good. Salt and pepper here. Oh yeah, I want to go to GitHub. And then I want to go to flashcards. And I want to go to code, and I see that I have a new branch, so I want to do a compare and pull request. So this is kind of like I'm doing like 5 people's jobs right now, like. But since I'm very familiar with the code, I'm just literally gonna just glance down here, and then I'm just gonna create the pull request. I'm gonna assign it to myself. I'm gonna create the pull request. and then I'm going to merge it. Merge. Uh, confirm the merge. I'm going to delete the branch. Now, if I remember, if I let's look real quick. Let's look at code, and we have two branches. I'm thinking GH. Yep, GH page is the other branch. So I think this is the branch everything gets served from. As you notice, like at the top of the branch is index.html. These guys are here. If we look at index.html, it has href flashcards, and I don't know, for some reason that solves a lot of issues. But you see, do we have the flash? I don't think we actually have any of the source code. And I didn't, that's just an observation. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have ever guessed that. Yeah, it doesn't look like we actually have this. We do have some kind of weird VS Code hidden, like a hidden directory in there, which is a little odd. But anyway, so yeah, we have two branches. One is the one that just got created that the page gets rendered out of. I got that working before, right? So if you look at voice API, I got all that working, but I was under such duress, there was no way for me to even slow down and like kind of go, oh, okay, I see what's going on here, blah, 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 blah. Um, so this was good. Let's go to my issues. I don't have any issues. Oh no. All right, so do we have, let's look at our closed issues. We have 4 closed issues. Set up the GitHub IO, set up DreamHost, create a Cypress that checks to remove the default Angular. So what is the next step? Can we code? Can we actually start coding? I think maybe we can. Was there another? Yeah, there we go. All right, so this is our flashcard builder. So the way the flashcard builder is going to work is you're going to be able to say, so it's going to be like this. So right now I'm just trying to figure out what the next task is because if it's hard to figure out the next task now, just imagine how hard it's going to be. Um, so in the flashcard builder, we want, I think what we're trying to build is a voice-driven application. Unlike Say Hello. Say Hello is like an interactive voice application. So it's like, oh, okay, you can push buttons and you can use voice features. But the flashcard is different. It's an actual voice. It's actually voice driven, right? So we'll be able to select different things. So that I think so I think the idea is that when you start the flashcard system, you have the option of turning on voice. And if you turn on voice, then there's various commands that you can use. Um, and that you can use your voice. So you can also use your mouse and your keyboard, and and you can also not use voice at all. Like you could just not turn it on. So uh, you can, but so it seems like what we want to be able to do is like have like a button to enable voice. And if you enable voice, you have a list of commands that you can see, like buttons that look like commands that are buttons that have a word on it and that is a command. And then it seems like you should have two sides. And one side is the question, and one side is the answer. And it seems like you need to be able to upload a set of questions and answers, and you need to be able to export your questions and answers that you've already created that you want to upload. So what is the first step? This is so exciting though, because it has been a long time coming. Because basically what we want is we're going to do this, and so this would be the equivalent to the enable, right? So you click this, allow this time. How many electrons does a hydrogen atom have? So, right, that's what we want. That's how we want it to work. But the thing is for this continuous is that I guess yeah we're so the thing is so yeah so we're kind of trying to think through. Okay, so basically you're going to have two things, and one will be your question and one will be your answer. So like it's always going to be recording like this. So it'd be like, let's try this again. Question, record. How many atoms are in a molecule? Completed. And then like, oh, and so then at that point it would quit sort of filling out the left side, and then you could manually update it or not, and then you could do that. So I guess the thing is do we need to build this out like voice first? You know how you have like mobile first and things like that? Like, does everything have to be built around the voice part and then, you build out the support things? I think so. I think everything has to work with voice first. So, and I think right now, early on this, I'm thinking that the design would be that you would have like buttons across the top, and each button corresponds to um, a different command. And whenever you say the command, the button lights up. Um, and then I think that that sort of moves us in the right direction. So now, um, I'm just trying to like kind of think through, okay, so what are the first pieces of this? And it seems like the first pieces of this are that we want to uh, basically have a service. No, I think we want to have a button, and the button is like um, can turn voice on or off, and um, and print to see. I'm trying to think of tasks that aren't going to end up um, sort of painting us into a corner. So it needs to be able to turn voice on and off, right? Because that is a basic thing. Um, and then when voice is on, the words go into a text box and a text area, and yeah, that'll be a good start. So you have to push the button manually to turn the voice on, and then and then it just prints there. And I feel like that's a very good start. And um, now, do can we break it down farther though? Because the thing is that is true. We can create. See, the thing is I guess yeah. And then, but the thing is we also, as part of it, a side effect of this is we want to create a service that handles voice. So this is like not broken down like into the most atomic sort of lowest level I want to, but I don't remember. Let me look at my closed issues. I can't remember. Do we have to like? So I don't put the issue number. So this is gonna be issue. Who knows what this is gonna be? It's gonna be more than 7. Okay. So implement voice outline. I don't know what the right word is. Voice um, structure. So one. Okay. So one. A button. Add a button that allows the user to turn voice on. Continuous. I always misspell that. Or is it to use? Just voice recognition on and off. And then it's kind of weird because like this seems like it would interact very badly with the voice, like the tools that people who use voice who need voice use, because there are tools that will let you do commands on the web, and they actually do. So you probably would not, if you were using one of those tools, you probably would not want to turn this on. You'd probably be like, um, you probably would use the tool itself, and then and it would know how to go into an area, text area, and start typing and start converting your voice into. Yeah, that will be a very bizarre thing if I decide to go down that route, of of enabling the tools, because the problem is that when you enable those tools, like they won't, somebody who can only use voice won't be able to actually click the button to turn voice on with their hand. They'll have to use the voice to turn voice on. And now voice is already on. I have no idea how those will play together. Um, it allows users to turn continuous voice recognition off on. I know there are some new laws to make websites like compliant to that, but I believe they only apply to websites that accommodate 60,000 or more people or 50,000 or more people. Um, so, um, so, but it'll be interesting because I guess some sneaky lawyers will be able to be like, "Hey, you're not accommodating stuff. You're not compliant and all that to just any mom and pop site." And then a judge will have to decide whether the law applies to the mom and pop site, which it doesn't. Um, but the mom and pop site will have to hire a lawyer to defend themselves. Oh Lord. Okay, yeah, that's gonna be really interesting to see how that plays out. I think it may only apply to government sites too, but I'm not sure on that. We'll add a text area that shows the text. 3, add a service that turns voice on and off and publishes. Yeah, this is where signals are going to be really nice. Publishes results. And this is like kind of vague. I don't think it's really appropriate. Would be really appropriate to like if you worked in a professional environment. It's just not enough unless you're like, and this happens a lot more than, probably more than it doesn't happen. But like a lot of times you kind of write stuff, you kind of talk to somebody who knows what they want, and they're talking to somebody else that knows how to do it, and then they vaguely write some stuff, but it's not exactly right. And a lot of times the people who are writing the stories, they don't really understand what the person who knows what they want and the person who knows how to do it, like they don't quite understand all the words that said in there, and they're sort of limited to just writing some stuff. And then a lot of times they end up having to write things after it's built, because then they're like, oh, okay, so oh, that's what you meant by that. Oh, okay. And then they're like, it's like published in production, and they're still finishing the bug, and they're like, okay, the bug's ready to code, and we're like, okay, and you have to be very sensitive because that is a hard job. Actually, when I first, I'm shutting it down, so I'm just closing stuff. But when I first started working, I knew how to code, but I didn't know how to code like in the language that I was writing requirements for. And I remember when I quit that job, it was kind of weird. So I was working for Boeing, and they paid me. It was in 1996. They paid me $36,000 a year, and the first year I worked like, and they would get like $200 an hour for my work. That was my bill rate as an electrical engineer, and I would work like 50 hours a week, 50 to 60 hours every single week, and then the first year they gave me a 10% raise. So I went from 36,000 to like 39,000. And they were making massive amounts of profit on me. And but the thing was they were only allowed their policy, Boeing's policy was that they only gave 10% of people 10% of the raise, 10% raises, and they gave out like, but year two I got to where I was really valuable on a lot of different projects, and I worked literally some weeks 80, 90 hours, but most weeks at least 50 hours. And that year they were like, oh, we'll give you a 4% raise. So they were willing to give me a raise to like, I don't know, but it was not, it was a tiny raise. And the thing is there were a lot of contractors on there that were making like $100 an hour, or $120, $150 an hour. And I was just like, that's not fair. I'm working more than these guys. I'm getting more done than these guys, and I don't make anywhere near as much as they do. It's not fair. So then I got a job that was where I was a contractor, and I was getting $35 an hour, and I was working like 70 hours a week. So I was making like $2,100 a week, when before I was making like $700 a week. And it was like, okay, I'm literally making three times what I used to make. Um, so I did that for a while. They literally Boeing called me after like 3 months, and they were like, "We'd really like to see if we could get you to come back." And they offered me 75K. So they were offered to double my income, to give me 100% raise. I would have stayed if they'd have given me a 10% raise. Um, but it was still going to be a lot less than I was making as a contractor. Um, and I don't even remember why I started coming down this path. Oh, that when I quit that job, I was a systems engineer. I did some coding at Boeing, but I was most of my tasking and my actual role was a systems engineer, and I wrote requirements. And I knew I wanted to quit for 2 years and code and then come back to being a systems engineer. And now it's been 30 years. And I'm still coding. I tried really hard to get back to be a BA or a QA, because most places just don't treat their developers very well. Um, but anyways, so that is that. It looks like we mission accomplished with that, and we have a good starting place for next week. Let me open this back up again. Um, just to make sure I have the right. I'm trying to make sure I'm set up to be able to get up to speed, because I know it's going to be like a whole full work week, all of the say hello, and then this. Okay, so implement voice structure. Okay, so I think I do have enough. I see that I don't have anything committed. I should be able to come up to speed very quickly and easily next Sunday. ChatGPT has nothing for me, so I don't really need to go and specially label anything. But yeah, next week I think the first step of that will be to create a button and a function that gets called on that button, and then um, a service that will be able to turn continuous recording. And I'll probably leverage, or at least look at the code in this to figure out how to get a recognition object up and running. Anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.